Okay, good morning, everyone. So Friday, March 24th, legislative meeting for Deschutes County proper, department heads and commissioners. And I was just looking kind of for agenda and the spreadsheet, so I don't have that up right now. So Whitney, if you want to take it away.
Thanks, Commissioner DeBone. This is an externally focused week, but I believe we'll have legislators joining us around 8:30. Doug, yeah, okay. So we have a couple things on the list and staff that have some time constraints. So Doug, if it's okay, I'm going to jump into the bill report unless there's anything that you want to lead off with. Okay.
That sounds good.
Okay, perfect. Commissioners, County Clerk Steve Dennison has joined us this morning. There are two bills that are flagged on the report that Jen sent out, but Doug sent a clarifying note related to House Bill 3509. It sounds like that was pulled from the calendar and they're going to do some more work on that bill, but I think it would be helpful to have Steve provide an update on House Bill 2004. Steve, you are there. You are. I'll turn it over to you to kind of introduce the bill and the draft priority and position you're suggesting to the board.
Great, thank you. Good morning, everybody. Good morning, commissioners. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. All right, great. So I'll just dive in and give a little background from my perspective and the clerk's perspective. But there have been literally hundreds of bills introduced this session related to election reform. And the Association of County Clerks, AOCC, is carefully following each one. And some of these, of course, will significantly change how they might shape elections and how they function. But no other bills would have such a drastic impact as House Bills 2004 and 3509, both related to ranked choice voting, also known as, RCV. Both of which AOCC is opposed. Personally, and as Deschutes County Clerk, I'm not against ranked choice voting, but the manner and how these bills are being seemingly green-lighted without input from the county clerks is troubling. Attempts have been made by the clerks to let the Rules Committee know our concerns, but those testimonies were cut short and really did fall on deaf ears. Besides the critical issues relating to ballot security and technology in these proposed versions of RCV, there's one major component that's missing from these bills, and that's the fiscal impact. There's no mention of who's going to pay, who will pay for the implementation of RCV, nor the ongoing costs. And currently, counties are not reimbursed for election costs related to elections run for the state, cities, or soil and water. And you've seen that in our budgets. We're only reimbursed by special districts when we hold elections for them, such as this May. Without addressing funding on these bills, additional literally hundreds of thousands of dollars would be drawn upon from the general fund of Deschutes County for the initial implementation alone. And also at the county's expense would be the ongoing cost to administer each ranked choice voting contest election. These elections couldn't reach over $100,000 on top of what we're already not being reimbursed for. So this is for the long term as well. The other problem we're having is given the time given to implement this type of election system, if either of these bills pass, they have an effective date of January 1, 2025. It'd be difficult for a single county to implement RCV in that time frame, let alone our entire state. So we simply need more time. AOCC is hoping to be part of a work group or task force that can better draft these concepts so they can be successful. This needs to be a collaborative conversation and not one that's simply driven by the advocates of these bills, which is really what it seems to be the case right now. The people that understand Oregon elections best, the county clerks, need to have a seat at the table. So I'm appealing to you as Board of County Commissioners to please join AOCC and oppose these bills. AOCC members are reaching out to legislators, as will I, but I wanted to bring it to the board's attention to join us in opposing these bills. So thanks for the time, and happy to answer any questions that you might have related to this.
Thank you very much. So yeah, my understanding then is that this is an idea, but clerks who would implement it aren't even at the table. And even if it's a discussion to be had, it's not happening right now.
Correct. In a lot of some of the testimony the legislators that are moving this forward. They make it sound that as if we're at the table. There have been some back and forth, but they're really not hearing some of the feedback that we're providing. So our association has walked away from the conversation altogether, so as not to be perceived as having a voice in the way these bills are being drafted, because we don't.
So it's been, yeah, it's clear line was drawn because you don't feel like it's really being listened to as an association. Understood.
Right.
Good. Well, yeah, commissioners, any thoughts? Commissioner Dare, Commissioner Chang.
I mean, I think ranked choice voting is an interesting approach to elections, but it needs to be implemented in the right way. So I would support Steve's proposed position on this.
And thank you, Steve, for letting us know what's going on, and I will be sure to be supported. Thank you.
Of opposing it.
Of course. Supporting
Yeah, okay,
Steve.
good, making sure. So we're all on the same page. And I'm in that spot too. So we can bring this to the AOC meeting when next time come around. Doug's heard this now, so understood. As to say, if there's a vibrant, inclusive conversation here, that'd be different.
Appreciate that. And again, yeah, it really comes down to a couple of things. It's that risk being associated with implementing this in such a short time frame. Putting our elections truly at risk of failure, and that has all the association very concerned. And then the funding of it, or the lack of funding of it, for that matter. We were already, it's a burden. These elections are already a burden to our general fund from the state and cities. So without the funding being fixed for the long term, that's going to be continued to draw on our general funds. So
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
So staff will pull both bills into a priority one opposition position as recommended by Steve. And just for clarification, and thanks Doug for your note in the chat, Doug's note was about House Bill 3009, not 3509. So the board considered both bills, and that's great. But just for Angie in the minutes, the previous statement was incorrect. I think
for clarity, so page 9 of our bill list, the second bill number,
is still in play.
3509, but that was the wrong number.
No, and not to make it more confusing, Doug had sent a note that a bill was going to be worked on, and that's a behavioral health bill, not the clerk's office bill. They have many of the same numbers, but not this bill.
Okay.
All right. Moving over to Eric, Crop, and Jen for a follow-up from the board's meeting on Wednesday, and a draft letter that's been put together related to a potential amendment to House Bill 2006. Eric, do you want to lead this discussion?
Sure. This relates to the board's discussion on safe parking earlier this week. And the request was to draft a letter to our legislative delegation. So Jen drafted it. Thank you to Peter and legal staff for quickly reviewing it. It was sent to the board last night about 5 o'clock.
Yeah. So yeah, this is a starting point, basically asking DLCD to, well, so yeah, what about the DLCD aspect of it? Because you just said this would be for the bill number. Because we talked about that at our work. Meeting on Wednesday.
On that.
Yeah, I can jump in on that. In fact, I forgot to forward this to you, Eric. Late last evening, I sent the email to DLCD just indicating that the board's going to discuss possibly sending a letter to DLCD and LCDC requesting potential amendments to the rules that allowed interim housing and temporary sheltering for people displaced by wildfires to effectively allow the same for people displaced by houselessness, by the housing crisis, homelessness, etc. I just forwarded the message to the board this morning. I received a response from the director. Yes, your timing is good. We'll be sending a letter to the governor by week's end, offering up that very idea, similar rules to respond to her emergency declaration. She requested it. I can send a copy along when it's ready. We would welcome a request from Deschutes County as well.
Great. Okay. Yeah. So putting it in perspective, a letter was created, sent to the governor from our board saying, hey, we need some flexibility at the perimeter of an urban growth boundary, whatever that looks like. Now this letter that Eric just mentioned is to the legislature saying that same thing. And now, so the 1, 2, 3 punch is asking DLCD to, understand that maybe there's a rule adoption package or something, emergency rules too. So all the same topic, 3 different
Exactly.
ways.
And I can
So let's
draft
get
that
back to
letter
that.
separately, if that's helpful.
What's that?
I can draft that letter separately if that's helpful. So we're aiming for both.
Great. Well, so yeah, let's back to this letter for commissioners to understand. So this is mentioning section 6 of House Bill 2006 to expressly allow counties the discretion to adopt safe parking programs on rural lands, including resource lands located outside of urban growth boundaries. So that's the substantive point here. Senators and representatives, our delegation, and then it's also mentioning, please contact our staff, Eric Kropp, Cheyenne Purrington, Peter Gutowski, or Dave Doyle, legal. So commissioners, any thoughts?
I'd like this letter to be more explicit about clipping the area to a tight circle around urban growth boundaries, the way that our letter to the governor was. Many thanks to staff for generating this on such a quick turnaround, but I don't think that the current language is as explicit as the language that we put in the letter to the governor. And the reason this is a concern for me is that anytime we talk about safe parking, managed camps, or other things anywhere, it puts people on high alert. It makes them anxious as neighbors of these sites. And you'll all recall that there were those 11 acres that my fellow commissioners were interested in exploring as some kind of an outdoor shelter opportunity well to the east of Bend. And that really, really blew up when people heard about that possibility. So if we put out this request to do safe parking all over the county, I would expect that we would hear from a lot of people concerned about that. What I believe we are doing right now is trying to enable the one well thought out, already developed, viable EFU opportunity that we've heard about, which is the Gales property, which is barely a half mile out beyond the urban growth boundary on the east side of Bend. And so I think that our letters should be tailored to enable that. And then when people ask us, hey, what are you doing with this? Where do you think you're going? We can say there's a group that has been working on a project for over a year now that has presented an opportunity, and we are trying to figure out the land use pathway to enable that.
So you're referring to the Gales property. You said 11 acres. I've heard of it as 9 acres. And you already also mentioned that it's been worked on for a year. So I'm just letting you know, I don't know anything firsthand about that. I've only heard about it secondhand.
The
So
11 acres is the
just don't assume I
proposal.
understand what you know of this situation. I don't know about it. I've heard about it secondhand. That's all I'm saying.
The 11 acres you should be well aware of, because that was what my fellow commissioners proposed maybe a year ago that blew up in our face. The 9 acres is the Gales property that Central Oregon Villages has been working on just to the northeast of the Ward Hamby roundabout. And if you want to learn more, you can talk to them more about it.
What 11 acres? I don't know what we're referring to.
Right. Commissioner DeBonne, it was something that I had brought up. It was property we had, and yes, it did blow up, but you know what? We heard from the community, and you know what? The community, I just spent yesterday 2 hours at Helping Hands in Portland at that facility. It is on 17 acres, if you can believe it. A fabulous facility. They do a great job. And guess what? They're having a really hard time with public funding for their program, which has great results. They have addiction services there, or they have access to treatment for people in their community. They have a great relationship with people. And, you know, so it is the 11 acres wasn't a good idea, as you are well aware, but if there's any way that we can, do something differently in our community, I would appreciate it. So I don't want to trap this letter and make it too teeny at this time, but I haven't read it. I'm on my phone today.
Got it.
All
So
I'm asking is for us to make it consistent with the letter that we sent to the governor. I mean, I don't think that that's, we had quite a lot of discussion about that letter. And I just think that we should have a consistent approach.
So, yeah, I started off by saying at the perimeter of our urban growth boundaries. That's the words I've been using. So I support adding that into this letter also. So that's been my mindset, and that's where we would be at. So flexibility in citing emergency shelters in cities and residential areas. Or no, maybe I need to go back here. Expressly allow counties the discretion to adopt safe parking programs on rural lands, including resource lands. So I support at the perimeter of existing urban growth boundaries. And that's the words I've been using.
Fabulous. So do it.
Yeah, so we're all on the same page.
All right. Staff
Use
will make that change, get it back to the board today, and then we can bring it up under other items on Monday for approval, or if there's additional changes.
Great. Okay, yeah, so that'll be final version in front of, so we're not meeting Monday afternoon.
Oh, okay. Then I guess Tuesday or Wednesday, I mean.
We might want, well, is that going to be a good timing, or should we kind of pre-approve the content right now?
If you just want the one change added in, I've already done that. I can just send it around and then we can bring it up at the end. If that works.
Yeah, let's do that. Commissioner Adair, I'm just proposing that we might get to voting in support of this by the end of this meeting.
Yeah, I'm actually, yes,
Yep.
I have to
Might
leave
be
it like
able to.
quarter. I have to leave it quarter tonight, so whatever.
Okay,
I'll
well, we'll
try
get back to
and-
it in 20 minutes then. Got it.
Thank you.
Commissioner, I see we have legislators joining us. I'm going to turn things over to Doug and kind of take a
Okay.
break from running through the bill report, and then we'll come back.
Well, good morning. I see we have Representative Krupp and Brian Iverson here on behalf of Representative Iverson, Breeze Iverson. So thank you for both being here. We'll get started with you a little early because we want to respect your time. I know things are busy in the Capitol and back home as well. So I'll just give a really quick kind of overview on what's happening from a Deschutes County perspective in Salem, and then we'll turn it over to the two of you. Just really quickly, the deadline for work sessioning bills in most committees is in about 2 weeks. Bills had to be posted by last Friday, so there's been a mad scramble to get through bills in Salem. Hearings are going overtime. Next week, they've got hearings well into the evening, starting at 5, going to 7:30 in some cases. There are a lot of bills still out there that need to have a work session, even though about a third of the bills died on the deadline last week. Just a few things that impact us. Senate Bill 644, the ADU wildfire fix, will be up on the Senate floor this coming week, and then we'll move to the House for consideration. I've already spoken to Chairman on the House Agriculture Committee about excited possibilities. House Bill 2001, which was the housing and homelessness package, has passed both the House and the Senate and been signed by the governor. It's pretty quick for a legislative session. That will include a variety of projects that will be helpful to the county and the partners in the county, including homeless youth funding that we talked about, but other issues as well. Ballot Measure 110, there's been a comprehensive work group on making adjustments to the provisions, the way the commission operates, the way grants are awarded, which of course is a big issue and a big concern. A big discussion on how the burns work. I've been sitting in on those meetings and participating when I need to. That bill, House Bill 2513, will be up for a hearing on Tuesday evening at 5 o'clock in the House Behavioral Health and Healthcare Committee, and then a work session the following Monday. So that's on a fast track. That's going to be a big bill. There will not be any changes to the penalties section of ballot measure 110. So there have been quite a lot of discussion from some folks about trying to further incentivize with sticks people who might need treatment, but I don't think any of those changes made it into the final version. Just two more things. There's a public hearing yesterday. Our county folks and the CLO folks testified. There was a long list of witnesses, lots of testimony in the record. That was a public hearing on the budget for public health and Ways and Means. And then just one final thing, the Juniper management water restoration bills that COCO had supported that we talked about. Those are House Bill 3142 and House Bill 3003 have both moved out of committee unanimously. House Bill 3142, which is the policy bill, included quite a lengthy amendment that I negotiated with Water Watch and brought Water Watch, Sierra Club of Bend, and Land Watch of Central Oregon to neutral. So I'm very pleased with the outcome of that. So we'll see where that goes. The tax credit
question on that one.
Yeah, go ahead.
So there's the fiscal on that is what, $9 million plus 350?
Correct. Yep.
So if this gets passed, does that still get negotiated at Ways and Means where that 9 million might end up a different amount?
Yeah, like all bills that have a budget impact, we're going to be waiting with fingers crossed for the May revenue forecast to come back and see what the art of the possible is. There is quite and Rep. Krupp has watched some of the discussions on this, and certainly Representative Iverson Breeze Iverson's involved in this, but it's a question of how much money is available and then what the priorities are. And I've heard from Ways and Means staff repeatedly that they want to allocate funding for projects in Eastern Oregon, Southern Oregon, Central Oregon. So I think we're in a good position.
Great, thank you.
The last thing I'll say is the co-chair's budget for Ways and Means came out yesterday. It's a draft budget. I have not yet read it. I'm not sure. Hopefully I'll get to it this weekend. It's very long. But you may see things or hear things, but that's just a draft budget. It's just an initial proposal, and the budget at the end of the session often is very different than the kind of the framework budget the co-chairs put out. So I think I'll stop on those issues and turn it over to Rep. Krupp and then Brian for comments, updates, how things are going in Salem, et cetera.
Thanks, Doug. Yeah, this is sort of an interesting time in Salem, right? We just had a week ago posting deadline for work sessions, so that cut a lot of bills down, and then you have this flurry of activity between now and April 4th to get bills out of House policy committees. And there's bills in different, bills that are ready and good ideas and stakeholder engagement's been completed, and there's bills that are, I don't know how I want to say this, not quite in final draft form, and all those folks that have bills that aren't in final draft form, the clock is ticking for them. The budget framework, as Doug said, came out on Friday. I'd reiterate a lot of what Doug said. That is is a continuation of a drafting process, and you get the governor's recommended budget, and then you get the co-chair's framework. I think it points us in the direction that we're heading in broad strokes, but we're still waiting for that May forecast for what those actual numbers are going to be. I think that framework shows a continued commitment to significant investments in our schools, significant investments in our behavioral health and housing issues. So the framework from 21, where there was an influx of dollars that aren't usually involved in the state fund, a lot of those dollars in 21 and 22 went to one-time projects. We saw some of those in our community, and we saw some of those throughout rural Oregon, right? 22, we did a $100 million rural Oregon infrastructure package to sort of take advantage of an influx of funds. We do have a hearing, I think it's this week, and there's been ongoing discussions about how we pay for courthouses. There's a bill that's coming out of Columbia County about whether bonding potentially would be available for courthouse renovations. We'll hear that. That I mean, I'm be curious to hear what that discussion looks like, and that potentially has implications for what we're attempting to do with our courthouse. And my guess would be easier to, well, I'll be curious to see what that discussion looks like. And I've talked with the proponents of the bills. I have not yet had a chance to talk with OJD, but OJD will be there this week to sort of walk us through their thoughts on that. So that could be a potential something that has an impact here in Deschutes County.
Yeah, thanks, Rep. That's a really good point on the courthouse funding. I had a conversation with one of the Ways and Means co-chairs this week and asked her about what the prioritization for capital construction projects, new versus kind of in the pipeline. And she indicated to me that, you know, a key priority for the committee is going to be ensuring that projects that are already pipeline are adequately funded. That'll be number one. And then there are a lot of kind of new requests as well, and they'll get to those as soon as they can. So I think from a Deschutes County standpoint, that should be helpful. And we appreciate your support.
I also think you see funding for projects in the last few years, and then folks sort of circling back based on new cost estimates due to inflation, and that being one of, I mean, right, speaking to the two people who know about that firsthand with our courthouse, but same thing happened with funding for OSU Cascade buildings, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, the only question I'd be curious that, you know, there is sort of this, I don't know how I describe it, you know, there's sort of a queue or for courthouse projects, right? You sort of cycle through, you know, it was Madras and it was Portland, and it was, you know, Clackamas is in the queue now, and then, you know, Crook County. And so if we looked at a different way of how we bond courthouse projects, and what I'm not sure is where would Deschutes County fall in the queue relative to other counties. I'm just not sure what that list looks like.
Well, so remember, Representative, for many years, we've been in this spot where, you know, we're a county with revenue and we don't have failing facilities. So it doesn't need to be a total rebuild. And we have some resources to do our own thing. And this inflation is what hit us right now. But every time the AOC in partnership with the OJD, everybody's talking about it. It's like, well, they don't fit into the model we're talking about. So we've just always been in that spot, just because, we're not looking for a total rebuild or a new building.
Right. You talk to the Clackamas County folks, and they talk about their courthouse sliding into the Willamette River.
See, that's a different,
That's a compelling. And then we've had a hearing and a series of discussions about our smaller rural county Oregon or counties. And it's like, how would Grant County, which probably has about 1,500 or 2,000 people, ever come up with their half if they needed a new building? And so
I went into the Grant County Courthouse last summer. The front door was unlocked. There was a little stand that said we work Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And there was like nobody in the building. I mean, it was amazing getting into that old building over there. I'm sure there's a flurry of activity sometimes, but it sure wasn't when I went.
Well, that's the rub, right? Admittedly, that building's not as busy as our courthouse, and our courthouse is not as busy as Portland's courthouse.
Yeah.
But that facility needs to exist in that community, and you can't build a open, there's no facility that only exists 3 days a week. So that discussion for Eastern Oregon counties, I find very compelling, especially those counties that are under 10,000 people, that is not much of a tax base to draw on to fund those types of infrastructure projects.
Great. Appreciate that. And as we get past the policy bill deadline and into the budget session, rest assured we'll come back to you with more details on the financial requests. So appreciate your help.
And I would say we are trying to sort of elevate our financial request by the middle of next month to the budget chair. So if you have information for us, I would start to formulate that and get that to us as early as possible.
Do you think status of the project would be helpful? Because we have architectural drawings, we're starting to get more estimates, you know, we can show that we are moving this thing and we're asking for financial support.
Right.
Is that the
Great.
right thing to
I
provide
think
at this time?
as much information as possible. We submitted a
Yeah.
letter, I want to say a week or two ago to the co-chairs, and then I will do a sort of new sort of House District 54 prioritization of requests. And, I've always prioritized Heart of Oregon. I know that doesn't exist in House District 54, but I represent 54, but we're all interconnected communities here in Central Oregon. So yeah, any information would help.
So, yeah, Nick or whoever, can we help get Lee just to get some 8x10 attachments for an update for the legislature, the current status of what we're doing. Thank you.
That's great. Thanks. Brian, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for having me, representatives. Sorry, she can't make it. They're voting on in Ways and Means, speaking of money. They're working on the chip bill today. So she had to run down early this morning to do some final work on that. So as that comes up in Ways and Means at 9:30 this morning. So she was focused on how they're going to spend $200 million more that your guys' discussion we may or may not have based on the May forecast. So I think to Rep. Krupp's point, there's a lot of things hinging on that May forecast. I think the co-chairs with their budget framework sure look like they're hedging that it's not going to be as good as I think everybody was hoping. So it seems to be the case is let's start hedging against it with the agency reductions, things like that, and then see what that ends up with. So I know that the representative's biggest thing is from the caucus is just a lot of this spending early could come bite us in the back after the May forecast. So from the housing package to the CHIPS package to anything else that's coming through where we're committing dollars. The I-5 bridge stuff, is kind of coming out. They're trying to figure out where to find $7.5 billion for that. I mean, there's a lot of things there and a lot of projects need to get done. I know that she's committed to the courthouse and definitely the Juniper funding. Those two things are important for her as far as priorities go. I think the Juniper stuff is, fits two different things in Crook, Deschutes, Jefferson County that she represents, in regards to creating more water by getting rid of junipers and just getting rid of that blight that farmers could use and also creating potentially some bio energy as well. But we'll see where that policy bill goes.
Grazing lands for elk and deer also. But seriously, between Sisters and Redmond, that whole valley area used to be grass, and now it's mostly juniper, and the grass does not thrive underneath them. So really, that's a whole just open landscape for browsing animals to be able to nibble, which is gone too.
I know the biggest thing that we talked about, and you're right, Commissioner, I think the biggest thing we talked about with the juniper stuff, and I've learned is you can't just go knock junipers down, right? And there's a lot of that out there that over the last, couple of decades, a lot of people have just gone out there and cut them and they've left it on the ground. You actually have to remove every single piece of that juniper off the ground for the water and the grasses to actually be effective, because if you don't actually remove it. And I think, doing something with those instead of putting them all in a pile and just burning it, the idea of putting it into some sort of, bioenergy, burning facility that could create, small megawatts of power would be effective. The only thing I worry about with those elk and deer range is if we put a bunch of solar panels in their way, then I don't know how they're going to, be able to move.
Lots of moving parts. Yep.
But there seems to be a lot in that way. The policy stuff, I think Rep. Krupp talked about it. I think everybody's really anxious on trying to get their bills heard and have public hearings before the deadline, coming up here in a couple of weeks. So I would imagine the policy side of stuff, you're going to see a lot of activity over the course of the next, I think is it April 4th, I believe is the deadline. So that I know that Vicki's had a rough week, I would say, with all of her legislators coming into her office saying, I can't get a hearing on this bill. I can't get a hearing on that bill. And so everybody's scrambling for a hearing, I think on both sides of the aisle. So I would imagine that that the majority leader is getting the same push from all the representatives. So I would imagine in a few weeks after that deadline, that's when I think we're going to really see what policy bills are actually moving and what stuff is truly dead and versus what we saw last week. So stay tuned, I guess, would be the biggest thing on that end, and stay engaged. I think this week there was probably more people in the building over there than I've seen all session so far. And I guess when you throw abortion, guns and those sort of things into the mix, it does create a lot more activity in the building. But we work through it. Everybody's got an agenda and we just got to keep working through it.
Just one note, Governor signed a drought declaration for Deschutes County yesterday. I was called and notified. I don't know if our staff heard about that, but it was just a request from the irrigation districts that we supported that the governor has signed. And we're in the middle of a snowstorm today, so pretty classic. Hopefully we'll get some good, snow up high in the mountains, though, seriously, in the next few days.
Yeah, we have, we're just because of my farm, we're members of OID here, and we're still Rainbow Reservoir and Ochoco Reservoir, still nothing.
Yep.
Even with everything we've gotten, it seems like everybody, all the snow's dropping on the Cascades before it gets to us, or it's dropping north of us or south of us. But
I saw that north and south, exactly.
Crazy.
It's snowing in Tigard. In fact, the rooftop of the houses across the way are completely covered with an inch of snow.
Yeah.
So it's snowing here.
Good. Okay.
And I do have a drought. It's a big drought package. And I was actually just started looking at it this morning that Rep Meek and Rep Owens have both just presented this previous week. And it's 37 pages or so. It's a drought relief package basically. And it's kind of trying to outline a bunch of stuff. So we're hoping there's some good things in there that we'll be able to move forward to, because I think that's got some long-term benefits and strategies in regards to how we're going to deal with drought.
So the board talked about that. Commissioner Chang mentioned that, we do have a lot of expertise, a lot of analysis, and people in Central Oregon that have been really focused on this for more than 20 years. How do we partner? So maybe there's a great opportunity to call together, I don't know if it'll be a legislative hearing, but just some on the topic in Central Oregon. We could get a lot of people in a room that could, talk about what we've done in the last 20 years. So whatever that looks like, maybe there's a round table or a hearing or, something. Hopefully we can add some substantive information from Central Oregon on that. Go ahead.
Yeah, Commissioner, I just say really quickly on that, and Brian, thanks for bringing it up. We had Representative Helm, Chair Helm, and Vice Chair Owens from the House Agriculture and Natural Resources Committee come yesterday to the COCO VTEL, and they gave a really good briefing and overview of the 7 elements in their drought package. It's everything from careful planning to stakeholder involvement, to projects on the ground, to water restoration, conservation efforts, like we've talked about before. I think that both the chair and the vice chair would be happy to come and chat with the commissioners. They might even be available to come during one of your commission meetings by Zoom, because they're very excited about the package, the drought package, and they think they've got a good chance of getting a significant investment in water issues.
Great. Well, so yeah, for your information, Doug, we've confirmed on Wednesday that we would be happy to convene a roundtable or whatever we can do, at Deschutes County proper, and bring the players, the long term, the folks that really have been studying this for 20-something years, for Central Oregon's needs.
I think that'd be a great idea. Could you make that more, region wide? Because you're the water in Deschutes is tied to the water in Jefferson.
Yeah, so as I say, I guess it would be the basin, Deschutes Basin, everybody that's in the watershed and the shed.
I think there'd be a lot of interest from the representative to be there too. So for her, she'd either have to Zoom or it'd have to be on a Saturday or a Sunday, because otherwise they're just swamped. But I think Zoom would be hard for them to at least attend. I would imagine all the other reps and senators that represent the area would probably love to at least listen in on it and see what everybody has.
For sure.
Yeah.
Great. It looks like Rep. Levy might be with us.
Yeah, and I'll just piggyback on what Brian's, well, one, I'd certainly like to participate or listen in for sure on that. And then I would also, there's plenty of bills that are still scheduled for work session that aren't in final shape that I just know aren't going to make it by April 4th. So we've focused some of the legislation. It'll be another level of focus come April 4th. Commissioner Dare, I know you called me about House Bill 3214. Animal shows legislation. That one's not moving forward, and that was one that was given more time to see if the intent could be reflected in the legislation, and that's just not happening. So there's plenty of legislation that's not going to just be finalized in time on April 4th, and there's plenty of legislation that just are regional ideas might be good, but how they got there is still problematic.
A nice way of putting it, Representative. I think, what do they say? They say they're not ready for prime time, right? There's a lot of those bills, just their language is off, language is wrong, those sort of things.
And it's a period of, admittedly, it's a period of prioritization, right? I tell this story plenty of times. Like my first month in my first term, I took a bunch of meetings about what struck me as all very good ideas, and I realized I'd heard 10 times the budget in good ideas. And so part of this process is just what are our main priorities and how are we going to fund those?
Well, if there's still checks in the checkbook, there must be money somewhere, right? So yeah, is Representative Levy with us?
I am. I apologize. I'm off camera. I've got a sick kiddo at home.
Not a problem. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah. Well, hopefully we circulated what our office is working on. I believe my chief of staff circulated that. Doug, did that go out or?
Yeah, it did. And with that, if you want to just give a quick overview, that would be great to talk about.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Alyssa's Law, we feel like we got 911, Sarah, all the things that they want, Sarah Crosswhite, all the things that they want. And I'm actually going to go meet with her in about an hour. And so we feel really great about Alyssa's Law. We feel really good about where 911 is with us. And turns out to get them what they wanted is actually pretty inexpensive because there are only 8 CAD companies in the state. And that SaaS license, you only have to buy once per company. So that was really, really encouraging. And I feel like it's a really great step closer to school safety, but also making sure that on the 911 end, they have the information that they need. And then I testified on the state of sport, trying to get a task force to bring sports economy to Deschutes County, along with Rep. Bynum, just kind of building off of the state of sport report that came out. And have a few I have a bill I just dropped about bringing heat pump manufacturing to Oregon, just kind of building up clean energy jobs. So, and then I believe we sent around all of the fund requests that we've sent out so far. So happy to answer any questions.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks very much. Any other issues or overview from our 2 legislators and Brian? What's the big thing coming up in the next week or 2 that we need to keep an eye
on? Doug, it's Commissioner Dare. I had a text this morning from Senator Bottom, and the word yesterday, this is a quote from the co-chairs of Ways and Means, there is no money for anything other than current service level. And then he repeated for anything. So, anyhow, Rep. Levy, I did go by your office yesterday and I missed you, but so glad that I found Doug on the streets of Salem last evening.
Marilyn said she got to chat with you.
Yeah, she was fabulous.
She is just wonderful. I'm so lucky to have her. Jason, do you want to elaborate on that a little bit more? The budget stuff?
Yeah, I think you and Doug can, well, I'm still going through all the documentation we got yesterday, but it is a tighter budget process. I think the framework they gave us based on the current allocation is, 300, and I think the figure is $325 million for potential additional programs beyond sort of a current service level type of budget. So keeping essential services intact. And that is, I mean, that's a significant amount of money, but like there are plenty of ideas floating around out there that I think show promise, but we have to be, we have to live within our budget, and we have to prioritize what are the top things that folks want us to address. And so I think it is the series of meetings that we've been having with people in the Ways and Means space is just about expectation setting, and you know, it's what I've been told, and Brian, you've been around this longer than I have. This is more reflective of previous budget cycles than my first session, right? And my first session just was an unusual set of circumstances, from pandemic to federal funds. And so that's why we were able to fund a lot of those one-time projects that are going to be, well, there's just going to be more competition for fewer dollars, is essentially where we are right now.
Yep, I would agree. I think what I'm seeing in the budget, I do a lot of the budget analysis for representative, and a lot of the things that there is a lot of one-time funding used for employees in some of these agencies. And so that's going to be kind of a tough spot for some of those agencies, and also for school districts that use one-time funding to hire employees, counselors, things like that. But you know what, I think Republicans and Democrats all agree with education funding, that, you know, that's always usually at the top of our list, and just kind of work from there, you know. And it's going to be policy wise, I think we saw a lot of at least the big issues that have come through. So I mean, there's a few more things coming up, but I think, you know, I think everybody's just going to kind of keep pushing. So I would say let's wait to have that discussion on what to really look for after next week.
Yeah, I think the April 4th is a big date, and then obviously the May forecast, right? So that is, this framework is in, I don't know, somewhere between pencil and light ink. And that May forecast will really round out what the discussions are going to look like.
Just to also chime in really quickly, Doug, when you mentioned things that are coming up on the housing front, you know, City of Bend, City of Redmond and Sisters, one of my really goals, and especially with the 3414 that came out, is to make sure that DLCD is working with us, not in concert, and making sure that that legislative intent is really clear, that as we build up housing production, it's for them to come alongside us and to help people be successful and not to be punitive. And we've worked really hard to make sure that legislative intent is clear. But with 3414, I think that's an opportunity to have that discussion again, that cities need help, and we need help building housing. And I see that should be the role of DLCD.
Yeah, thanks for mentioning that. That's not a bill that we've gone into in great detail, but I think we need to put it on our next agenda for next week to talk about. That's a bill that has really gotten under the skin of the cities. It kind of blames the cities for the housing crisis, and forms an office of accountability at DLCD to punish cities that don't do the right thing, and strikes the LOC and a lot of our city partners as kind of an upside down approach. So it's generated a lot of passion building. And if you look at the OLIS list of submitted testimony, it's pretty long already, and I'm sure it'll grow before next week. So thanks for raising that.
So I think one of the big picture items is infrastructure costs, you know, roads, water and sewer. You know, we hold ourselves to a real high level where we're going to make sure we have water system, sewer system. We're going to have a paved road. We're going to have sidewalks. And then in Bend, we have the Park District. And all of a sudden, you know, the cost of a house is very expensive. So I'm just pointing out that, you know, there may be some give and take in there somewhere. So Commissioner Dare might have left. I don't know if she did. We had a letter that we're proposing. Commissioner Chang put in the text here that he supports revised letter with the word perimeter language in there. So I'm just letting you know that I support getting that letter out for signature, confirming that signatures are provided by the commissioners we can acknowledge the letter next Wednesday. So let's just move on from that. And
Commissioner DeBonne, if I can jump in quickly, Commissioner Adair confirmed she's good with the updated draft, and Commissioner Chang is on the call by phone and has a question.
Oh, okay.
And I apologize. I need to hop off, but
Yep,
nice
not a
seeing
problem. We're
everybody.
just trying to make sure, doing
Yeah.
other business. Have a great day.
Thanks.
Commissioner Chang. So I'm pulling up the updated letter right now.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Great. Circling back to the drought package, I wanted to ask if Representative Levy is still there, if she can explain or connect for us whether that package is going to be going through the Joint Ways and Means Subcommittee on Natural Resources, of which she's a member.
That is a great question, Commissioner. I believe so, but it hasn't been assigned yet, is my understanding.
Because I'm not sure where you came in, and I'm sorry I'm in and out, but there was a fair amount of discussion a few minutes ago or a little while ago about the drought package, and I at least am very interested in seeing that package, or at least some key components of that package, be funded, and so it would be helpful to know if we should be lobbying you. I mean, it's great to talk to Representatives Owens and Helm about what's in the package, but the dollar decisions are the hard part, it seems, and so us understanding where that's going to be processed in Ways and Means would be really helpful.
I would hope, well, first you can always lobby me for anything, but I would hope that it would come through Natural Resources, because that's where the most knowledge on the subject is with the people that we have on the committee. So I think that would be most helpful, but I will find out today where it's headed and how it's headed, and I will get back with you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Commissioner, I could just let you know that there's an HJR attached to the drought package, HJR 23, that is scheduled for a hearing on April 4th in the Ag, Land Use, Natural Resources, and Water Committee, and that's Rep. Helm's funding mechanism for the drought package. So, but it's going through the policy portions right now. So I would probably start there, is where I would start. And that's where a lot of the drought stuff is going to be, I think, starting in, is his own committee. And then it will go to, from what I've seen, it will go into that joint sub. It has to go to a joint sub first. And that's where it will go, based on what I'm seeing on the policy side of how it's moving.
Great, thank you. Yeah, I'm definitely tracking with, or trying to track with Reps Owens and Helm by just when the money decisions come down. That's it would be great to understand how that's all going to work.
Well, the subcommittees don't get to actually, they just either they vote for a do pass or, a recommendation. They don't actually get to fund stuff. That has to go to the full Ways and Means. So that would be the process, but that's where they would do all the hearings, and everything would be in that joint sub.
Great, thank you.
So Doug or Whitney, maybe take us home here, or what else?
No, I just want to thank Rep. Levy and Brian and Rep. Krupp for joining us this morning. And they, as always, they and their staff have been wonderful to work for so far this year. It's fast and furious in the Capitol, and they've been very patient when I've knocked on their doors, or when the commissioners have wandered by and knocked on their doors. So we've got a good team in Salem. And Senator Finley and Knopp are in a Ways and Means this morning. And Representative Rechke is in Joint Committee on Tax Expenditures this morning. So that's where the other members of our delegation are this morning. But thank you for joining us. And I've got one other quick update for the department heads and the commissioners. If we've got a moment or two.
Well, please.
I'm going to
Yeah.
go ahead and hop off, but thank you
Yep.
all so much. And
here.
always feel free to reach out to me via text or email anytime.
Thank you.
Thanks, Rep. Levy. Appreciate it. Thanks for being here.
Thank you. Thank you.
So just really quickly, one of the things I didn't mention early on, but you'll see in the bill tracking list, a lot of the behavioral health bills and workforce bills are beginning to move. The House Committee on Behavioral Health and Healthcare has been one by one trying to get those bills out and down to Ways and Means. The governor has also proposed kind of a comprehensive behavioral health package. It is unclear to me, since that came so late in the process, how that dovetails with all these individual bills. I mean, she really missed the hearing window and the consideration window with that package. So we'll see how that plays out. But I know behavioral health workforce is important to the county and certainly all of our partners, and the ability to get services to people. So those bills are, I had thought that and recommended that the committee try to put together a package itself, but they didn't get around to it. So they've kind of been passing these one by one. There was a Southern Oregon University behavioral health training package. There was a Portland State workforce training package, and these bills are all kind of individually being sent to Ways and Means. So for our public health and healthcare folks on the phone call, stay tuned and keep an eye on them. And then the last thing I'll say is that there's a self-serve gas bill. I think that was raised by someone a few weeks ago, and it looks like the self-serve gas bill might actually make it through this session. It made it through last session, was vetoed by Governor Brown, but Governor Kotek voted for it the last time it went through the legislature. So the expectation is that opportunity is going to be expanded in rural Oregon. That seems to be a topic of hot conversation from time to time. So just as an FYI.
I'm able to self-charge my electric car. Great. Thank you very much.
Well, if I can just ask a quick question then, since I've been trying to coordinate with DLCD about the letter we talked about at the start of the meeting regarding the administrative rule piece. They're hoping that we could submit something today, because they're hoping to submit their letter to the governor's office today about what flexibility they might be able to provide outside of UGB. So if the board's comfortable, I can draft just a brief letter just on my own letterhead, just state it's on behalf of the board so that you're not gonna have to review it. If my emails kind of summarize the highest level what it is. We would then have full discretion on how, where to implement it, et cetera. So if we don't want it to be beyond a certain area or in certain, I mean, the bill, it already has a lot of sideboards in it, but it does provide more flexibility. So just want to get your direction on that, because I don't want to miss this opportunity if you want me to take it.
Well, so I support, you writing a letter as county administrator. And then, because we can always write a letter and get something out next Wednesday or 2 weeks from now, if something more substantive is being proposed. Commissioner Chang?
Nick, I support Nick proceeding with exploring this as quickly as possible as well.
Great. Okay. And is Commissioner Dare here, or did she sign off?
You had to hop off.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner, I do have one quick bill. If the commissioners have time that CDD would like to just raise for your awareness.
Sure.
Perfect. Peter, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. This pertains to House Bill 3197. As currently proposed, it would limit the requirement that housing regulations and be clear and objective only within urban growth boundaries. And so for some context here, in 2017, there was a bill, Senate Bill 1051, which clarified at the time that these clear and objective housing requirements and regulations, conditions, and procedures apply to all housing inside an urban growth boundary. Washington County ultimately was subject to, they approved, a hearings officer approved a subdivision. That decision was appealed to LUBA. It was ultimately appealed to the Court of Appeals. And they found that this clear and objective requirement applies potentially to all housing. So that would include rural housing. The Court of Appeals decision isn't perfect, but there's been concerns ever since that decision was rendered that it could apply to rural areas. On one hand, there's a lot of interest in having clear and objective standards. It sounds fantastic on its face. Developers, property owners can rely on those provisions to get housing in the rural areas. It's much more complicated than that. In natural hazard areas, floodplain zones, there are often not clear and objective criteria. When there's wildlife inventories, there are often not clear and objective criteria. And if you happen to be on the coast and you're implementing coastal provisions, there's often not clear and objective criteria. So there's a hearing scheduled on Tuesday, March 28th. And Washington County is reaching out to other counties asking for supportive testimony behind House Bill 3197, which again would clarify that the clear and objective provisions only apply within urban growth boundaries. The final comment would be that Washington County is mired in litigation as they try to apply clear and objective standards within their urban growth boundary. They have a huge area. They serve over 200,000 people. To the extent that it was determined that the existing provisions apply to rural counties, I just acknowledge for everybody that it's very complicated, time consuming to get our codes into that clear and objective status. So, from a planning standpoint, there's really good reasons, I think, to support the House Bill 3197, but I recognize with Commissioner DeBonne still participating this morning that there could be a push politically for clear and objective criteria, irrespective of the challenges of modifying codes to reflect that standard.
I don't understand.
You don't.
I mean, I followed some of the stuff here, but I don't have a feel for what. I'd need to learn more. I don't even understand the whole concept here.
Okay.
I might just flag that I think we have lost Commissioner Chang, so we might be down to one commissioner.
So let's talk about that on the phone. Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. I was kind of following, but I'm like, okay, what is this really?
I guess to try to distill it, it's as the laws are currently on the books today, and there's a lot of development interest to ensure that these clear and objective housing requirements apply to rural areas. And counties, in coordination with the county planning directors, are acknowledging that it is daunting to modify their codes when they are administering wildlife and natural hazard and other regulations which don't have clear and objective criteria. So that this bill would clarify that the clear and objective criteria for housing would only apply within urban growth boundaries.
But clear and objective for approvals or
all of it.
Production
exactly. Procedures, development criteria, there would be no discretion. And so it would be, so if you're doing a subdivision or a cluster development, you couldn't have any discretion. So it makes, on the face of it, housing development, whether it's for one home or a large scale development, easier on the face of it to get the requisite land use approval.
Well, and we don't need to take too much time. So clear and objective standards, as in you shall have a paved road and a X amount of parking and a sidewalk and water and sewer and fire standards and everything that's here. So that stresses me out.
Commissioner, I'll say that this has confused the land use advocacy community for many sessions. As Peter mentioned, this was an issue back in 2017. It also confused the court, I think. So
okay, good.
Probably a good subject for a longer discussion.
Yep.
offline.
But
But the
thanks for
bill-
bringing it up, though.
Yeah,
and-
thank you.
The bill is very short. The bill has like 6 words in bold or 7 words in bold, as I recall. And so it's a 1-page bill, easy bill to read, but difficult bill to understand.
Thank
Great.
you.
Thank you. So yeah, 9:05, people are dropping off. Anything else?
I think we'll roll everything else into next week's call, but
Yep.
thank you, Commissioner DeBonne.
Okay, so we'll be meeting Wednesday in the board. So if there's any other legislative updates, we can meet then, and we're not having a board meeting Monday afternoon.
Great.
Have a great day, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.